The first thing I noticed when I walked into my house was the empty space near the kitchen window. My husband bought that dining table 41 years ago after his first promotion. But while I was recovering in the hospital, my son sold it without asking me, and he had no idea what was hidden inside it. I stood there with my overnight bag hanging from my shoulder, staring at the pale square on the floor where the table used to sit. Dust outlines, 4 clean circles where the legs had been. It looked wrong, like somebody had cut a piece out of my life while I was gone. My son Daniel came in from the garage carrying grocery bags like nothing happened. "Oh, good. You made it home," he said. Calm, casual. "How you feeling?" I looked right at him. "Where's the table?" He froze for half a second. That was all. "Oh, that old thing?" "Mom, come on. It was falling apart. The legs were wobbling. Melissa found a guy willing to haul it away." "Haul it away," I repeated. His wife walked in behind him with that tight little smile she always wore around me. "We thought you'd be happy to finally have some space in here." Space. 47 years I cooked in that kitchen. Thanksgiving dinners, birthday candles. My husband sitting at the head of that table paying bills with his reading glasses halfway down his nose. And now she was talking about space. I set my bag down slowly. "You sold it while I was in the hospital?" Daniel sighed, already irritated. "Mom, please don't make this into drama. We've been helping you for months." Helping me. That word burned worse than the surgery stitches still pulling at my side. They'd started helping after my fall in February. First it was organizing my medications, then taking over my mail. Then suddenly Daniel had copies of my house keys and opinions about everything I owned. I noticed another thing then. The china cabinet drawer was open slightly. My chest tightened. I walked past them without a word and pulled it open. Empty. Completely empty. The small velvet boxes were gone. My husband's watch, gone. The silver coins, gone. And the envelope. God, the envelope. I turned around so fast I got dizzy. "Where are my things?" Daniel's expression changed immediately defensive, hard. "What things?" "The drawer was full before I left." Melissa crossed her arms. "You probably forgot what was in there." I actually laughed when she said that. A short, ugly sound that didn't even feel like mine. "You think I forgot my own jewelry?" Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice like I was some confused old woman at a nursing home. "Mom, your pain medication is strong right now." That did it. I felt heat crawl up my neck so fast my hands started shaking. "You sold my table," I whispered. "And now you're standing in my kitchen trying to convince me I'm crazy." "No one said crazy." "You implied it." Melissa muttered, "Here we go." I looked at her. "Excuse me." She shrugged. "Every conversation turns into some guilt trip with you." I stared at both of them standing there in my house. My son avoiding my eyes while his wife talked to me like I was a burden they regretted inheriting. Then Daniel said something that made my stomach drop. "We were trying to protect you from making bad decisions." Protect me. The envelope hidden inside that table held something they knew nothing about. Something my husband hid there before he died in Tulsa 11 years ago. He made me promise never to tell Daniel unless absolutely necessary. And judging by the look on my son's face, it was becoming necessary. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face and walked to the sink like he was the exhausted one. "Mom, you're overreacting," he said. "Nobody stole anything." I could feel my heartbeat pounding behind my eyes. "The envelope," I said quietly. "Where is it?" He turned slowly. What envelope? For a second, I almost believed him. Then Melissa looked at him too fast. Tiny movement, barely noticeable. But I saw it. 40 years of marriage teaches a woman how to spot guilt before words even arrive. You found something in that table, I said. Silence. Daniel looked away first. That was enough. My husband Harold built that table himself in our garage in 1985 after some furniture store laughed at us for not being able to afford solid oak. He spent 6 weekends sanding it by hand while Daniel played baseball in the driveway. What Daniel never knew was Harold hollowed out one section underneath the center panel. Small hidden compartment. Barely visible unless you knew where to press. Inside was the envelope, and inside the envelope, Lord help me. I sat down carefully because my knees suddenly felt weak. Melissa spoke first. There wasn't money in it, if that's what you're implying. So they had opened it. Daniel shot her an angry look. I stared at both of them. You had no right. We thought it was paperwork. Daniel snapped back. The guy moving the table found it underneath and handed it to me. What guy? A reseller from Oklahoma City. You sold your father's table to a stranger for what? A few $100s? Daniel's face hardened. We needed the room. No, they needed cash. I could hear it now, underneath everything. The pressure, the irritation, the impatience every time bills came up these last few months. Melissa suddenly pulled out a chair and sat across from me. We're drowning, Linda. That was the first honest thing she'd said since I got home. Daniel looked embarrassed immediately. Melissa. No, she said sharply. She deserves to know. I watched her carefully. The restaurant failed, she continued. The second location destroyed us. We owe taxes. Credit cards are maxed out. Daniel took loans against the house. I looked at my son slowly. You mortgaged your home? It was temporary. That means yes. He slammed his palm on the counter. What was I supposed to do? The anger in his voice startled even him. We were trying to survive, he said, quieter. And every time we came here, all we saw was this giant house full of antiques and locked drawers and things nobody uses. Things nobody uses. My husband's watch, my mother's earrings, the silver coins Harold collected one by one after Vietnam. Things nobody uses. Then Melissa said the sentence that made something cold settle inside my chest. When Daniel found the papers in the envelope, we thought maybe this could solve everything. I stopped breathing for a moment. What papers? Daniel didn't answer. I stood up slowly. What papers? Finally, he looked at me. There was property information. The room felt smaller instantly. How much did you read? All of it. I closed my eyes. Harold had owned land nobody knew about. 40 acres outside Amarillo, inherited from an uncle back in the 70s. Everybody thought it was worthless desert dirt, until oil companies started buying nearby parcels last year. Daniel spoke carefully now. Too carefully. Mom, that land could be worth millions. There it was. Not grief, not sentiment, not concern for me after surgery. Millions. And suddenly I understood why my son sold that table before I even came home from the hospital. Because he was searching my house. I don't remember sitting back down, but somehow I was in the chair again, staring at my son like he was somebody I used to know. You searched my house while I was recovering from surgery. Daniel immediately shook his head. It wasn't like that. It looks exactly like that. Melissa leaned forward. Linda, please listen calmly. Don't tell me how to listen in my own kitchen. Her mouth shut fast after that. Daniel started pacing. Same nervous pacing his father used to do before bad news. "We didn't go looking for secrets," he said. "The compartment opened accidentally." "But you kept reading." Neither of them answered. That silence told me more than words could. The envelope contained deeds, old mineral contracts, handwritten notes from Harold, and one letter addressed to me only. My husband made me promise not to tell Daniel about the land because he feared exactly this. "Easy money changes people," Harold told me once while we sat at that very table. "Especially family." At the time, I thought he was being cynical. Turns out he was being smart. Daniel finally stopped pacing. "You don't understand how bad things are." "I understand enough." "No, you don't." His voice cracked now. "We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. Ethan's tuition check bounced last week. Collection agencies call all day long. I can barely sleep." For a brief second, I saw my little boy again. Scared. Cornered. Then he ruined it. We wouldn't even be in this situation if Dad had told me about the land years ago. I stared at him. There it was. Not shame. Entitlement. "You think your father owed you that money?" "It's family property." It was his property. Daniel's face flushed red. "And now it's yours." Melissa stepped in quickly. "Nobody's trying to take anything from you. You already did." That landed hard. The room went dead quiet. Then Daniel said something low and ugly. "You're sitting on millions while your own family sinks." I felt something inside me harden. "My family?" I repeated softly. "You sold my belongings while I was hooked to heart monitors." His jaw tightened. "We were going to replace the table." I almost laughed again. Replace the table. Like grief was furniture. Like history could be repurchased. Then I asked the question that had been growing in my chest since I walked through the door. "How much did you sell from this house?" Daniel froze. Melissa looked down immediately. "Oh, God. Oh, my God," I whispered. Daniel held both hands out. "Mom, wait. What else is gone?" "Just a few things." "A few things? Nobody uses half this stuff." I stood up so fast, pain ripped through my side, and I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "Get out." "Mom, get out of my house." Melissa stood immediately. Fine, we'll leave." But Daniel didn't move. Instead, he looked at me with something colder now. Resentment. Years of it, maybe. "You care more about objects than your own son." That one hit deep because part of me feared maybe it was true. Then I remembered Harold coughing blood into hospital tissues while begging me not to let Daniel destroy himself with greed. And suddenly I understood something terrible. This hadn't started recently. This started years ago. The loans, the failed business, the constant upgrades, the expensive cars. The way Daniel always talked about deserving better. The land just gave him a target. I walked to the hallway table and picked up my house keys from the dish. "You don't come in here anymore without my permission." His eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Yes." "You're choosing money over us." "No," I said quietly. "You already made that choice for everybody." Melissa grabbed his arm hard. "Daniel!" But he yanked away from her and pointed at me like I was some enemy in court. "You think you can sit here alone protecting dirt and papers while your family falls apart?" Then he said the one thing he should never have said. "Dad would have wanted me to have it." I slapped him. The sound cracked through the kitchen so loud even I shocked myself. Daniel just stared at me, hand against his cheek, silent, and for the first time since he was a little boy, My son looked afraid of me. The look on Daniel's face after I slapped him. I still see it sometimes when the house gets quiet at night. Not pain. Shock. Like it never crossed his mind that I might finally push back. Melissa grabbed his arm again. "Let's go." He kept staring at me another second, jaw tight, eyes wet with anger more than hurt. Then he gave a short, bitter laugh. "Wow," he muttered. "You really lost it." I pointed toward the door. "Out." This time, he listened. The front door slammed so hard the wall frames rattled, then silence. Just me, standing in the kitchen, trembling so badly, I had to grip the counter again. My incision burned. My chest felt tight. For one terrifying moment, I thought I was heading straight back to the hospital. I lowered myself slowly into Harold's old chair and cried harder than I had at his funeral. Not because of the money, because somewhere along the way, I lost my son and didn't notice until a stranger was standing in my kitchen wearing his face. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Nora, my granddaughter. I wiped my face before answering, even though she couldn't see me. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice sounded nervous immediately. "Grandma, are you okay?" I closed my eyes. "What did your father tell you?" "That you hit him." Of course. Not that he sold my belongings. Not that he searched the house. Not that he opened private documents. Just the slap. "I did," I admitted quietly. Nora was silent a moment. Then she asked, "What happened before that?" That question alone nearly broke my heart, because she asked for the whole truth. Something her father stopped doing years ago. So I told her. Everything. The table, the hidden compartment, the land, the missing jewelry. By the end, she sounded sick. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Dad sold Grandpa's table?" "Yes. He told Mom you were confused from medication." That one hit me like ice water. Confused. There it was again. The beginning of every ugly family story involving money and old people. Not grieving, not recovering, confused. I suddenly remembered Daniel insisting on handling my discharge paperwork at the hospital. Him taking my mail to help. Melissa asking casual questions about my accounts while fluffing my pillows. A terrible feeling crawled through me. "Nora, has your father said anything about power of attorney?" Silence. Too much silence. "Nora, I wasn't supposed to tell you this." My blood went cold. "Tell me now." I heard her breathing shakily into the phone. "About a month ago, Dad met with some lawyer in Edmond. I only know because Mom was yelling about it afterward. Dad said once you moved into assisted living, everything would transfer smoother if paperwork was already prepared." I couldn't speak. The room literally tilted for a second. "Grandma, they were planning this before I even got sick," I whispered. Another silence. Then Nora said softly, "I think so." Outside my kitchen window, the sun was starting to go down over Tulsa. Orange light across the yard. Harold mowed himself until cancer took his strength away piece by piece. I suddenly remembered another moment. 3 weeks before my hospitalization. Daniel insisting I should simplify things. Daniel asking where I kept legal records. Daniel offering to put his name on my checking account for emergencies. God, it had been happening right in front of me. Nora's voice cracked through the phone. "Grandma, Dad's really losing it over that land." "How bad?" "He thinks it'll save everything." That answered more than she realized. This wasn't greed anymore. This was desperation. And desperate people do dangerous things. Then Nora said something that made my stomach drop completely. "Grandma, there's something else." I gripped the phone tighter. What? I heard Dad arguing with somebody tonight after they left your house. Her voice lowered. He kept saying the buyer can't know yet. Every muscle in my body went stiff. What buyer? I don't know. But he kept yelling about contracts and deadlines and mineral rights. Mineral rights. Dear God. Before I could even answer, headlights swept across my front window. A car pulling slowly into my driveway. Not Daniel's truck. A black SUV I'd never seen before. Then somebody knocked on my front door. I stood there frozen in the middle of my kitchen while the knocking came again. Slow, firm, confident. Not a neighbor. Not family. I looked through the little glass panel beside the door and saw two men in dark jackets standing under the porch light. One older, gray hair, expensive boots. The other younger, holding a leather folder against his chest. The older man gave me a polite smile when I opened the door halfway. Mrs. Linda Grayson. Yes? My name is Walter Briggs. Sorry to bother you this late. Something about him immediately felt wrong. Too smooth. Too comfortable standing on somebody else's porch after dark. I believe your son Daniel and I have been discussing a property transaction connected to land in Potter County, Texas. Every nerve in my body lit up. I think you should leave. His smile faded slightly. With respect, ma'am, there appears to be confusion about ownership. The younger man opened the folder. I saw papers, contracts, maps, oil company logos. My heart started pounding again. Walter kept talking calmly like we were discussing weather. Your son represented himself as acting on behalf of the estate. The estate belongs to me, I snapped. He nodded once. That's what concerns us. Us, plural. There were more people involved. How much money? I asked quietly. Walter hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. How much did Daniel promise you? The younger man answered before Walter could stop him. $3.8 million for the initial mineral lease. I physically grabbed the doorframe to steady myself. $3.8 million. Harold always suspected the land held oil, but we never knew for certain. The contracts in that envelope weren't just deeds. They were old geological surveys. Harold spent years quietly renewing mineral rights, while everybody else forgot the property existed. Daniel found all of it, and he moved fast. Walter cleared his throat awkwardly now. Mrs. Grayson, we were under the impression your son had legal authority. No. The older man's expression changed instantly. Professional panic. Tiny but visible. He provided documents. What documents? A draft authorization and family transfer summary. Fake paperwork. My own son forged paperwork. I suddenly understood why Daniel had been pushing assisted living so aggressively, why he wanted me declared confused, why he needed signatures and power of attorney before winter. He was trying to sell land that wasn't his before I realized what was happening. The younger man quietly started sliding papers back into the folder. Walter looked embarrassed now. Ma'am, if we've been misled, we sincerely apologize. No, I said softly. You need to tell me exactly what my son signed. For the next 20 minutes, those men sat in my living room while my entire world cracked open. Daniel had been negotiating for weeks. Weeks. He'd already accepted advance money, used projected lease profits as leverage against personal debts, and worst of all, he signed preliminary agreements using Harold's old estate documents. Documents he stole from my house. By the time Walter finished explaining, I felt sick. He's in serious trouble, isn't he? I asked. Walter didn't answer immediately, Then quietly, if the companies involved pursue fraud charges, yes, fraud charges against my son. I looked down at my hands, and suddenly they looked ancient to me. Thin skin, blue veins, hands that packed his lunches and buttoned his winter coats and held his face when he cried after nightmares. Now lawyers were sitting in my living room talking about fraud. Walter stood carefully. Mrs. Grayson, I strongly recommend you contact an attorney first thing tomorrow. I already have one. Good. At the door he paused. For what it's worth, your son looked desperate. After they left, I locked every door in the house. Then I called Donna. She answered immediately, even at that hour. And after I explained everything, she went completely silent. Finally, she said one sentence. Linda, you need to prepare yourself. For what? Her voice lowered. Because if Daniel forged estate authority documents, the police may get involved before morning. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every sound outside made me jump. Every pair of headlights passing the house made my stomach tighten. At 6:12 in the morning, somebody started pounding on my front door hard enough to shake the frame. Not knocking, pounding. I already knew it was Daniel. When I opened the door, he looked terrible. Pale, sweating, same clothes from the day before. Mom, he said immediately, stepping inside without permission. We have a problem. I shut the door slowly behind him. A problem? He ran both hands through his hair. You talked to somebody. You forged documents. His face changed instantly. Okay, listen to me carefully before you panic. Before I panic, I stared at him in disbelief. You used your dead father's records to negotiate millions of dollars behind my back. It wasn't finalized yet. But you took money. That was an advance. His voice cracked so loudly it echoed through the kitchen. I noticed then his hands were shaking. Not guilt. Fear. Real fear. Daniel, I said quietly, did you commit fraud? He looked away. That was answer enough. I sat down slowly at the table. Not the old table, just some cheap folding thing they bought after selling Harold's. And suddenly I felt exhausted beyond words. I gave you everything I had, I whispered. You gave me scraps, he exploded. The words hit like a gunshot. He froze immediately after saying it. Too late. Years of resentment finally spilled out all at once. You and Dad always acted like I should struggle for everything while you sat on land worth millions. Do you know what it feels like drowning every day while you sit here in this house protecting secrets? Your father protected that land because he knew this would happen. That's convenient. He was afraid money would destroy you. Well, maybe being broke destroyed me first. Silence crashed down between us. Then Daniel's phone rang. He looked at the screen and went white. Actually, white. Who is it? I asked. He ignored me and answered immediately. Hello. I watched his face collapse piece by piece. No, wait. Pause. They talked to her already? Another pause. Then he started breathing hard. I can fix this. More silence. Then, what do you mean, frozen? Frozen. My blood ran cold. Daniel lowered the phone slowly after the call ended. What happened? I asked. He looked at me like a little boy again. Cornered. Terrified. The bank locked everything. I didn't move. My business accounts, the house line of credit, everything. I stared at him quietly. Then he whispered something I'll never forget as long as I live. I thought I had more time. Right then, another car pulled into the driveway. Daniel rushed to the window, and the second he saw who stepped out, he started crying. Not polite tears, not stress. full panic. Two detectives climbed out of an unmarked sedan, while a third man in a dark suit carried a folder toward my front porch. Daniel backed away from the window, shaking his head over and over. Mom. The knock came at the door, and my son looked at me like he wanted me to save him. Some stories end quietly, but the damage stays with people for years. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below and subscribe for more real emotional stories like this one.